issues with. All right, welcome everyone again. Thank you for joining us. If you've had time, participate in the poll. We appreciate all of your feedback. It helps us to shape the content for future programs and improve. Every week for the last several months, since March 31st, we've been bringing you these 1-hour sessions titled BrainTalk Live on behalf of the Emory Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. So we want to welcome you on behalf of Dr. Monica Parker. She is our director of our Minority Engagement Corps, and Ken Hepburn is the director of our Outreach Recruitment and Engagement Corps. And our mission is to improve awareness for our worried well. It's to improve our exposure as a research center. Our ultimate goal is to find a cure for memory impairment. And until that happens, our only hope right now is research, and also to provide support for people who are caregivers. So today we have a phenomenal lineup, and if you joined us last week, you learned a lot about biomarkers and science. Thank you all for the amazing feedback and the encouraging emails about all that we were able to share with you last week. So this week you're going to hear from Hillary Williams-Thomas. She's the Associate Director of Advocacy and Outreach with the AARP. She's going to be talking about how to prepare to care. It's a program that AARP provides, and she's going to give you some guidance on that. So be sure to take lots of notes. And remember, the session is being recorded, and we'll send out a PowerPoint after the session. So after Ms. Thomas, you'll hear from Dr. Felicia Goldstein. She's going to be talking about normal cognitive aging and super aging. Have you heard that term? Well, she's going to be covering all that today. So you're going to get to understand what is super aging and how does that apply to me. Then we're going to hear from Dr. Kalisha Bonds Johnson. She's going to be sharing about the psychological and emotional effects of living in isolation during COVID-19. So a lot to cover today again. Again, this is just high level. Any one of these presentations could take all day to just cover, but we want to give you just a little bit of information, some nuggets, so that you can be informed as an adult. So with that, Dr. Parker, do you have any additional remarks before we transition to our exercise? Because every week we have exercise, and we say what's good for your heart is good for your brain. So get that chair ready, get your water, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Parker before we hear from John.
Thank you, Cornelia, and thank all of you for tuning in again on Tuesday for our Brain Talk Live. You're going to hear a lot of information about what we want you to do or what's required for you to stay healthy. Ideally, we do a lot of this to make sure that we are keeping you informed of opportunities, certainly to stay healthy, but more importantly, to participate in ongoing clinical research, which means stuff that we need you to do that may help you in fighting a battle against Alzheimer's. For most of us on this call, it's assumed that most of us are healthy and without evidence of Alzheimer's or some other dementing disorder, but we really need those of us that are healthy and unaffected to participate in the clinical research that we have going on here at the Emory Alzheimer's Disease Research Center and any place else in the country. If you're not interested in brain health and Alzheimer's research, pick some kind of disease entity. Now we're learning about COVID and the importance of vaccine trials and participating in these trials such that we develop a vaccine that's effective against developing the COVID-19 infection for all groups of people. The name of the game is research, and in order for the research or the medications and treatments developed to be effective for you, people like you, have to participate in research. So Whit's going to talk to you a little later about research in the Emory Healthy Brain and Aging Program, and we'd like you to sign up for anything you feel comfortable with. Thank you.
Okay, John, take us away.
Okay, I'm ready to get y'all alert today because I want to learn a lot about that super aging. So this is a great way to keep active and keep that body going. I want your hands up. We're gonna do some boxing, martial arts, in the chair, hands up, good defense. And I want left hand. Just turn it. Right, here we go. Right hand. And I want you to turn that waist. I want that core. We're gonna end up speeding it up a little bit. Good. Left hook. Right hook. Turn that waist. Look how my arm comes up level. Let's go. Turn, 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 turn. Left uppercut. Turn, 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 turn. We getting that upper chest. We getting them shoulders. And we getting that waistline. Right hand. Let's go. Turn it. Turn it. Turn it. Turn it. Turn it. Good. We're going to do left, right. Left, right. Bring it back. 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 Left, right. Good job. Left hook, right hook. Ready? And go. Left, right. Left, right. Left, right. Left, and right. Uppercut left, uppercut right. Ready? And go. Left, right. Right. Look how I'm leaning my waist. Left, right, left, right. Good job. Now we're gonna double it up. I want you to just keep punching. Come on. We're getting that upper body, we're getting that blood flowing because we got a lot of information to go over today. Keep punching. Left, right, left, right, left, right. Good. Continuous hooks. Let's go. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Keep it going. Left, right, left, left, right. Good job. Continuous uppercut. Ready? And go. Left, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Good job. Now I'm gonna do right elbow, but I'm gonna twist. Okay? Twist. 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 Turn that waist. Twist. We also getting that lower back when I bring myself back. Now, let's switch arms. Boom. Come on. Keep it going. Keep it going. Boom. Turn it. Turn it. Turn it. Turn it and stop. Great job. Now, we're going to take it a little slow. I need all of that core. Good detail, Dave. Can I get a little snap of fingers? Let's go. Come on. Give me that waistline right here. Turn. Feel the groove. I want y'all to just feel happy. There we go. Hands out to the side. Can I get a little crunch? Crunch, 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 crunch. There we go. I'm opening up those lats, then I'm bringing it down. Can we go deep? I'm adding a little bit of shoulders in, but I'm staying on that waistline now. Now I'm getting a nice stretch, and I'm still on the side obliques, and we're getting that lower back, and we're getting that circulation going. Watch it now. Now I'm gonna get a little bit of those lower abs. You're gonna feel it in those hip flexors. There we go. Let's get a little bit of upper body. Come on. Here we go. Can Can I go a little bit wider? We're going to target those outer obliques and go. Look how I added that upper body in there for that outer chest. There we go. And rest. Now I want you to sit up straight, and we're just gonna take it back around. Come on. Come on. Now I'm gonna add a little bit of upper body. Other way. Can I get a little shoulders with it? There we go. We're working on the details today. Great job, great job. Woo. Here we go. Stay with me now. Tap, 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 tap. We're about to get those hamstrings, those outer hips. Come on. Watch now, angle. Now we engaging those outer hips, those outer quads, and we getting that cardio up. Watch now. Go to the side. Look how I'm doing that little twist, and I'm getting those side obliques. I mean, really engaging those hips. There we go. Can I go back? Watch it. Watch it. Bring them hands up. Come on, come on. Come on. Switch. Bring them down. Come on, we're really engaging those hips. Watch it now. Rest. One. Feet wide. Bring your hip in. Come on. I'm feeling good today now. Whoa. Great Tuesday. Great week. Great month. Give it. Let's get it. Great. I just need y'all to just walk with me. I heard some of y'all caregivers really loving it. Come on now. Get them up. Get them up. Come on. Come on. Get them up. Do what you can now. And rest. Last one now. Last one. I want to thank y'all for coming on and doing something for yourself. This is it, everybody. We're going to do a little combo of everything. Come on, press it. Lean back, lean back, lean back. Let's go. Come on. Tighten the chest up. Come on. And hold. Now we're getting them shoulders, them outer lats. Keep it. Bring it up. Come on. Bring it down. Press, 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 press. Let's go. Come on. Let's rock with it. Come on. Come on. Pop. Pop. Come on, right here. Come on. Let's go left, right. Come on. And 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I want to say to y'all, thank you for joining in. We took it a little slow today, but next week, you better be ready. I'm talking about you better have your sturdy chair, you better have your water bottle, you better have your towel to wipe off, and you need to tell some of your families and friends about what's going on at Emory, because the information you're getting is priceless. Priceless and tell others of what Emory is doing for you. I'm John Lewis, and see you later. Bye.
All right. Thank you, John. And we did not tell him to put that plug in for us, but we appreciate it.
Oh, yes.
We thank you so much every week. He joins us and he gives us all this amazing energy, and it just comes through the screen. So I hope you're ready. I think he warned you about next week. So you guys better be ready to work it out and all the different things we can do right at home in our chair in the comfort of our home, because exercise is so important, especially as we're aging. So let's get started. Hillary, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you for being here. Welcome. And I'm going to pull up your slides while you introduce yourself.
Right. Well, thank you to Emory for inviting me to participate. I have presented with Emory several times, but this is the first virtual with Emory. My name is Hillary Williams Thomas. I'm the Associate State Director of Advocacy and Outreach with AARP Georgia. And one of the many things I do with AARP is presenting on our caregiving information and really working with caregivers to try and help them develop a caregiving plan. So if you're ready, Crystal, we can go to the next slide. So when we're in person, I like to try and do this as a physical activity. When you see all of these different challenges that caregivers go through, and I'm sure many of you are caregivers on the call and you have heard of these different challenges, but when you see all the different challenges, I like to throw balls and try and see how many of these people can keep up in the air and what they can do. And it's very difficult when you just think about all the different things that caregiving involves: driving to appointments and coordinating care and getting in contact with other people on the care team to try and figure out what's going to happen with care, and talking to doctors and actually feeding people and doing laundry and all these things. It just comes at you so fast. And what do I do? And we really try and help caregivers with some of that so that they're able to manage it a little bit better and they don't have everything thrown at them at one time. You can go ahead, Crystal. I'm sorry, Cornelia. So we've developed what we call a 5-step caregiving plan. And in this caregiving plan, there are different parts, but each part is very important. The first part is starting the conversation. And through starting the conversation, we're asking you to start the conversation with the person that needs care. Even if the person does have a diminished mental capacity, they still need to be a part of the conversation. It really makes it less of you doing something to them. It's more of you trying to help them and including them in the conversations that affect their life. A lot of times with family, we always feel that we know best, and what we want is what the care recipient needs to have. But we really need to have them as a part of that conversation so that there is buy-in, just like it is with anything else. And if the person is having any type of advanced dementia, what I say is literally still sit down, because I mean, I unfortunately have had several relatives have Alzheimer's, not just dementia, but we still had conversations about anything else and what was going on a daily basis. But talk to them, say, you know, these are some things that we have going on, and I think we need to have somebody come in and help do, you know, help us with your daily activities. Or I think this person is going to come and help with help with cleaning the house. Or, you know, Miss Mary down the street is going to help drive. But talk to them about it. And hopefully with Prepare to Care, we encourage people to prepare to be cared for before there is an issue, because we know that at all times in our life, we're all going to fit into one of these categories. And Rosalind Carter is famous for saying it. Either you have been a caregiver, you needed care in the past, you will be a caregiver, you will give care to someone. Like that's we're all going to fit in there at some point in time in our life. And if we have these conversations on the front end, we're not worried about it later on. So with Prepare to Care, you can write out all of these steps and all the things that you want for yourself before you need care. And at the start of somebody's diagnosis, that's a very good time to start having those conversations. Now, if the person is advanced, like I said, still sit down and talk to them, because you still need their buy-in. Having a constant conversation with them is probably a good thing, because you need to have them used to having that conversation. When I was giving this presentation a couple of years ago, this gentleman interrupted me and told me that he had gotten some care for his sister and she did not want the care. And my first question to him was, did you ask her, was she okay with having someone come in the home? He was like, well, she's known this woman for years and she's just coming to do her hair and help out around the house. And these are the things that she's doing. I said, okay, that's all good and well. Did you ask her if she wanted this person to be in the home? And after about 3 times of me asking and him kept telling me what she was going to be doing, he finally said no. I said, okay, so you're saying that you have gotten Miss Martha from down the street to come and help your mother. And, you know, Miss Martha has known your mother for years and you don't understand, or your sister, and you don't understand why she does not want her in her home. I said, for all you know, they've never gotten along or they never liked each other. But you've now invited this person to come into her home without having the conversation with her about saying, Martha is going to come and do your hair, or are you okay with Martha doing your hair? So it's still getting the buy-in. And in some communities, it goes more, it's even different than the buy-in. When you're having that conversation, you also have to have conversations around finances. You know, what type of care do you want? How are we going to pay for this care? Have you set up anything around finances for this care? And in some communities, it is more difficult for people to talk about finances. And there is a real strong feeling of, you stay out of my business. And people don't want you in their financial business or in their business as a whole. So we have to find creative ways to start the conversation with people. And I always tell people to look at things that are happening in, you know, popular culture. And one that I can always pull on is good old Prince. Prince passed away unexpectedly with no will, millions of dollars, properties, companies, all different types of things with no will. So that's a really good end to kind of talk to your loved ones, especially when they're not in a diminished capacity. Talk to them about that and have a little conversation around that, and then say, hey, so we don't want you to end up in that situation. I don't want to be in that situation. What do we need to do to make sure that those things are taken care of? So after you've had that conversation, you need to form a team. And I really mean a team of people. Caregivers, we like to think we can do everything ourselves, and we can't. You know, those balls that we talked about in the previous slide, those start to drop when we try to juggle all of those balls by ourselves. Now, if that's paid care, if these are neighbors, friends, church members, association members, you know, people in the care recipient's life, most of us, there have been very few times when I've worked with people on their caregiving plan that I have not been able to find someone for them. But most of us have people that have said, how can I help? Or let me know if you need something, or what is it that you need? And during COVID, it has changed. And actually during COVID, I've changed my stance on helping people. And I will be very upfront. This is my opinion. This is Hillary Thomas's opinion. This is not AARP's opinion necessarily. This is not Emory's opinion necessarily. But after watching one of my friends deal with her mother who had advanced Alzheimer's during COVID, and seeing how her mother declined rapidly during COVID, I changed my position, because my position was absolutely not, no home care, don't do it, you know, no adult daycare facilities, none of it. But at the beginning of COVID, you know, things were different even than they are now. There was no adult daycare. The situation with having caregivers come in the home was up and down, and people weren't sure whether to do it or not. And I watched my friend's mother decline rapidly because I mean, well, she had Alzheimer's, but also she wasn't doing the things that she used to do. She couldn't go to her daycare that she was used to going to. She wasn't seeing the caregivers. She wasn't going to church. She wasn't having any of this interaction that she was used to having, and digital wasn't working for her. She needed to be doing the things that she was doing. And she literally went from being at an event with us in February and dancing and having a great time to 3 to 4 weeks later, she was bedbound. She couldn't do it anymore. Her body really declined. So if you feel that having a paid caregiver come into the home or go to your loved one's home and that works best for you, I say do what works best for you, even in this time, just because I really did see the decline in that person not having the contact with humans that she needed. But form your team. So look within your network and think about those people who are able to help and help with caregiving. Now, when you're forming your team, like I said with the gentleman and his sister, think about relationships. So if your mom has never gotten along with her sister, that sister's probably not the best person to help give care to her. Think about relationships between people. If a child and a parent don't necessarily have the best relationship, they might be loving, but they don't really work well together, then they probably aren't the best people to have on a care team either, at least not a face-to-face and everyday type thing. But think about the skills and the talents of those people who you're thinking about on the team in order to move forward and create the team. So, and you also don't necessarily have to worry about where the people live. Just like we're on a virtual conference right now, you can have people who live states away do some of those tasks that are taking times, calling these doctors, waiting on hold with different departments. So think about how everybody can be a part of that team. And the third step is making a plan. And I suggest that people physically make a plan. I mean, physically go out, get a piece of poster board or paper, and write out what it is that you need, because all care recipients are different. Some people just need somebody to drive them to the doctor. Some people need prescription pickups. Some people just need meal delivery, or maybe they need meal delivery and rides to the doctor's office. Some people need 24-hour care. So whatever it is, write it out. Write out the days of the week, write out what the tasks are, and physically write down who is responsible for what. So when you are making this plan, you need to make this plan when you have your meeting with your team. So we just talked about forming your team, but you need to make a plan with this team and meet with them. So get on Zoom, get on the phone, meet in person when that's something that's feasible, and sit down and say, okay, who is going to get mom to the doctor every Wednesday? Okay, you can get mom to the doctor every Wednesday. Write that out. Mom needs dinner every week. We've got the other meals taken care of. Who's going to bring dinner? Miss Mabel down the street said she'd bring dinner. Okay, Miss Mabel's doing dinner. And write out who is responsible for what. It'll make it so much easier. It sounds like a lot, but it's so much easier when you have a plan. And I'm sorry, I'm reading at the same time. It sounds so much easier when you have a plan and something. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Dr. Parker is giving some information on how to talk to people with dementia. Now, the most important, so we talked about making the plan, and Crystal, as always, is telling me that I'm almost out of time. The most important step to me in the caregiving plan is finding support. And it's, well, I'm sorry, that's the second most important, but finding support using your local resources, your senior centers, your area agencies on aging. Go to aarp.org/caregiving, and there's tons of information there. And we also have caregiving concierge available there to help you through your caregiving plan, as well as to lead you to resources in your area around caregiving. So the most important step is caring for yourself. Caregivers typically do not take care of themselves the same way that they take care of the people that they are giving care to. I know my own mother, with her struggles in caring for my father and my sister, my mother wasn't making her own doctor's appointments because her primary care physician is my best friend. I found out that my mother had not had a doctor's appointment in 2 years. And, you know, I keep telling her that's why you shouldn't have your daughter's best friend as your primary care physician if you didn't want me to know that. But she said that she had been to the doctor so much with my dad that she forgot she hadn't been to the doctor for herself. So you have to sit down and take time for yourself. If it's taking care of your health, if it's taking time away from caregiving, caregivers need to take care of themselves. When AARP redid our guide, we went through and they very thoughtfully redid the way of going through and talking about caregivers taking care of themselves. In the original guide, there was a picture of a woman having a massage. And that's a great thing. If you can get a massage, if you can go get your nails done, that is a fabulous thing. However, some people aren't able to do that with financial restrictions. So take a walk, go to the park, get some of that care for some of the other people on the team, get some respite care, and find ways of taking care of yourself that don't necessarily include money. Sometimes people go to church service or prayer meeting, or some people just go and sit down with a friend, like I said, in the park and talk. But make sure you're taking that time to take care of yourself. And I think I stuck to my time, Crystal. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions, but I am done.
Thank you, Hillary. So as we close, how can individuals on today's webinar access the guide, the Prepare to Care guide?
So if you go to aarp.org/caregivers or caregiving, but I think you can go to both caregivers and caregiving. We like to take both. You'll be able to find access to the guide. And you can also search for caregiving under aarp.org. And you can find some information around things that we're doing for caregivers if you go to aarp.org/near-me.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you again. We're going to put the URL in the chat as well as the resource line. There's so many amazing things that AARP does, and we appreciate the partnership. Do reach out, and I think the closing remark for me is, if you're a caregiver, take care of yourself. Okay, so Dr. Goldstein, welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. I am going to spotlight your video, and if you can introduce your topic and we'll get started.
Hello, I'm Felicia Goldstein. I am a clinical neuropsychologist in the Department of Neurology at Emory, and I'm glad to be here today because I want to talk about what's normal cognitive aging and then talk to you about a group of people who are called super-agers. Next slide. I don't know why they're showing this way, Cornelia, on the screen. Apologize for that.
Okay, let me move some. I'm having a couple of technical issues.
Yeah,
here.
that's okay, but apologize for that, audience. But basically, this is a survey that was done by the CDC a few years ago, just asking people 45 years and older whether they were experiencing any subjective cognitive decline. And it turns out that that's pretty common for people who are older to start noticing some changes in their thinking. In fact, in Georgia, about 31% of people 45 years and older who lived alone said they were starting to notice some cognitive decline. Next slide. So what is normal cognitive aging? Well, our brain does age as does change as we age. So certain structures change. For example, memory structures change as we get older. Our speed of processing, making decisions, and our ability to remember things may slow. So it may be harder to come up with information on our own, but eventually we do. It's just a little bit slower. However, on the good side, on the flip side of things, it turns out there's an increase in wisdom, expertise, and inner vocabulary as we get older. This has been shown in numerous studies that even after age 50, people, when they're evaluated, show increases in these particular areas. Just because they've lived longer, they've had more life experiences, they've read more, their vocabulary has increased over time. And all of this is normal. This all is a normal part of aging. Next slide. So what do we call this? Well, psychologists and other cognitive psychologists talk about something called crystallized intelligence. And this tends to be stable over time, even as we get older. And this is the type of knowledge we acquire through experience and education. So, for example, general information about the world, our wisdom, facts and skills that we've learned or built up from reading and from our experiences tend to remain stable over time and not to decline with age. Next slide. However, there's another type of intelligence called fluid intelligence, and this refers to our ability to manipulate knowledge and acquire new skills. So as we get older, it may be harder to solve a problem. It may be harder for us to mentally manipulate information in our minds, like, figure out a tip or how to make change on something or balance our checkbooks. It may be a little bit more difficult to perform 2 tasks at the same time. This doesn't mean we can't do it, but if we compare ourselves to people 20s and 30s, there is some change in this ability, maybe a little bit slower to do it, but we can eventually do it. Next slide. So the area that is most affected in normal aging has to do with processing speed. Basically, we slow down. We're slower in responding to our environment. We're slower in talking. It's been shown that we're slower in recalling memories, and there's decreased information processing speed. So it may take us a little bit longer to, if we're listening to a complicated conversation, it may take us a little bit longer to process that information. There's also a slight decline as we get older in our working memory. So our ability, again, to mentally perform tasks. Again, I use the example of mental arithmetic. One of the things we are asked to do in our evaluation is to count backwards from 100. Well, we can do it, but it just may take a little bit longer. We have to hold that number in our mind, subtract 7, and hold that new number in our mind. And it takes, it's a little bit more effortful for us. Next slide. So in terms of memory, can you go to the slide right before that? It's a cartoon. Oh, I guess it's not showing. It's okay. So in terms of memory, it turns out that our recall is compromised. It takes us longer to access information. So if you're asked, what did you do last week? It may take you longer to retrieve that information. But the good news is in normal aging, our recognition memory is not affected. So if your spouse says to you, well, remember we went to the restaurant, we were with these, this other couple, then generally you can access that information. So it's in there. It may be a little bit harder to get out. The other thing I hear a lot from people has to do with names, retrieving the names of people or things. About 20% of people as we age report some difficulty coming up with words. It's there, it'll eventually come to you. It may be a little bit slower at accessing. Next slide. So as a neuropsychologist, the question is, how do we know what's normal? Well, when I see people for evaluations the doctor sent me, I administer tests to them of their cognition, their ability to remember words, to draw things, to remember what they drew. And everybody gets the same instructions, the same stimuli, the same scoring. But I then look up your score and compare it to people of your age group and your educational level. And from this, I can tell whether or not your aging is falling within normal limits compared to other people, or whether there may be some sort of a change or decline in that. Next slide. So why do we have these changes as we age? What's going on? Well, Obviously, there are sensory changes as we get older. Our vision, our hearing change. So therefore, it may be harder to process information. It may take us longer to hear what's being said, and therefore to really be able to process it. People, as we age, have medical conditions, may have comorbidities such as hypertension and diabetes, and these in turn can also affect our thinking abilities. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, our brain does change as we age, and there's actually some shrinkage, volume loss each year. Not much, but enough where it may be a little bit harder for us to access information, even though we eventually can get to it. New slide. So there is this really exciting field now called SUPER-AGERS. And a lot of this research is coming out of Northwestern University. If you go to the Google and you go SUPER-AGERS Northwestern University, really great vignettes on there and also some videos. I wanted to mention too that at Emory in our Alzheimer's Center, Dr. Antoine Trammell recently got a pilot grant where he's going to be studying SUPER-AGERS. And I'll tell you who these people are. Next slide. So a SUPER-AGER is a person who is 80 years and older, but is performing normally at the level of a 50 to 60-year-old person. So this is a person 80 and older who may be given a word list of 15 words and is able to recall 12 words after a 30-minute delay, and is at the same level of someone 50 to 60, whereas another person 80, they only recall 8 words. These are people with phenomenal memory abilities. Next slide. And Northwestern has studied the characteristics of SUPER-AGERS. What they found is that these people tend to go outside their comfort zone. They tend to stretch themselves, learn things that previously maybe they, like algebra, calculus, things they would have not previously done. They tend to lead very healthy lifestyles. They have a positive outlook on life, optimistic. They suffer losses. They're 80. They've suffered a lot of losses in their lives, but they still maintain that optimistic outlook. And they engage in a lot of social and cognitive stimulation. Next slide. We recently lost Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was 87 years old and was phenomenal. She continued to work, she was independent, and she was involved with people and did meaningful and supportive activities. And even though she died of cancer, her mind was great up until the end. She is an example of someone who's successfully aged. New slide. So I wanted to just quickly tell you that I've told you about normal aging, but if you are noticing changes that are troubling you and interfering with your ability, you're having more trouble cooking, with bill payment, medication management, you should talk to your clinician and discuss whether further workup is needed to confirm that these changes are within normal limits. And not just to settle for an answer that, oh, it's just part of normal aging. If you know yourself best, and if you are feeling something's not right, definitely see your physician and clinician and discuss this with them. Next slide. And finally, I wanted to tell you about a very exciting opportunity for all of you listening that's developed in our cognitive empowerment program at Emory. We now have a virtual programming ability for people to sign up for. This is held every Wednesday. As part of that, there's physical activity, there's yoga, there's Tai Chi for balance. And in addition to this, we're going to be having monthly sessions. Next month, actually it didn't take place on September, it will be held again in October. We'll be giving a series on mild cognitive impairment and how to distinguish that from normal aging and dementia. And you can contact us on the left. There is a phone number and also an email you can contact us about for more information. And there's also a link that you can click that will take you right to that Zoom meeting. So we're very excited about this, and think it's a wonderful opportunity that we can offer the community. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Goldstein, all the questions are rolling in. Are you ready?
Okay, I'll try.
Well, how do you distinguish between high intelligence and memory abilities?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, whenever we evaluate people, we actually try to figure out, what they were like before maybe they returned to their doctor for a problem. Obviously, there can be a connection that people with very high intelligence may have better memories. So we always try to figure this into interpreting our results. And for this reason, we also look at education as one of the factors that we try to figure out with our norms.
And Dr. Parker, you could address this. How does moderate alcohol consumption impact super aging? That's a dual question for you and Dr. Goldstein, but you could talk about maybe the alcohol consumption and Dr. Parker or Dr. Goldstein with super aging.
I think I looked at this, and I guess I would have to say, what is moderate alcohol consumption? Because alcoholism, which is where you're having more than 2 drinks of wine a day, does affect your brain function over a long period of time. I've spoken about this before. There is something called alcoholic encephalopathy. So people who are drinking like 5 or 6 alcoholic drinks a day in their middle age going forward are likely to have a problem with the way their brain functions and their overall health status. So without a little bit more definition, the word that I would say the thing that I would advise all of us to do is not to exceed 2 glasses of wine with meals on a daily basis. So if somebody is drinking more than that, that's going to have a significant effect on their overall physical function, certainly with liver failure. You've heard of cirrhosis of the liver. Well, we have cirrhosis of the liver that comes from drinking too much. And when your liver doesn't work well, that's one of the main ways that your body detoxifies itself with respect to the breakdown of medications, chemicals, and other things. So chronic alcoholism does more to you than destroy your brain. It destroys your body's overall functioning, particularly as it relates to liver function. And your liver is where you make red blood cells and other things. Okay.
Dr. Goldstein, there was a question about, can you define false memory? Have you heard that term?
Define what?
False memory.
Yeah, that is an interesting concept. That's, just what it really means, that you have a memory of an event that actually isn't accurate, that really didn't happen. That happens too sometimes as we age and we talk to our friends and they will say, that's not at all what I remember. That's not uncommon to hear people say that they remember something very different than another person.
Okay, and I think that's it. All right, well, thank you.
Wait a minute, before you go on, one of the things, and this is a good thing for Dr. Goldstein to address, Mrs. Browning asks, as part of the Emory Healthy Brain Aging Study, I was given a cognitive test. Can I obtain the results? Felicia?
Oh, I think the answer is, as I know it, is no. Only it's a research study, not a clinical evaluation. So the results are not being released to people. If you're in the Healthy Brain Study, though, if there is an issue, we review people in a consensus conference every month. And if we determine that something doesn't seem right about your testing, we will contact you and encourage you to either come into Emory or go see your primary care physician for further workup.
Right. And unless a study specifically tells you that they're going to give the results of any of the testing, whether it's a radiologic study, blood study, or anything else, unless they tell you that when you sign the consent, don't expect to have the results of the study or whatever it is that they find, because unless, as Felicia Goldstein has explained to you, unless there is something that you must address with your provider because it's a critical health issue, in general, research results are not communicated to the individual unless, again, it's stated so at the beginning where you sign the consent.
Okay, and there are two additional questions, but I'm going to ask if Dr. Goldstein and Dr. Parker can respond in the chat to everyone, and so that we can transition to our next speaker. But they had questions about can a person get tested for memory loss without it going on their medical record, and how do you know what normal aging is considered since we've been in isolation? But with that, we are going to transition. Welcome, Dr. Bonds. Thank you so much for being here with us. And we're going to talk about isolation and what is happening right now psychologically with us, emotionally, physically. There is a lot going on as we've had to limit our in-person contact for not weeks, but months. So thank you again for being here. We welcome you. I'm going to ask you to unmute and
hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Kalisha Bonds Johnson, and I am a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. And so I worked with clients as young as 5 and I think as old as 101 years old. But I'm currently a postdoctoral fellow in the Neil Hodgson Woodruff School of Nursing at Emory University. And my research focuses on dementia caregiving, specifically within African American families. The presentation today is psychological, if you could go back a slide, psychological and emotional effects of the living in isolation during COVID-19. Next slide, please. So before I go into the strategies for overcoming isolation, I thought I would start with providing a clear description of isolation, psychological effects, and emotional effects. Prior to COVID-19, isolation is usually kind of considered, it's forced upon us from sort of an outside force, outside of us. And in this picture, we see that there's this green game piece that is sort of isolated or kept separate from the red pieces. Next slide, please. When we think of psychological effects or the word psychological, the brain, the mind are words we think of: thinking, intellect, feelings, and emotions, which we will talk about on the next slide. The Oxford English Dictionary defines psychological as of affecting or arising in the mind related to mental and emotional state of a person. Psychological or mental health is often hard to see just by looking at someone. There are some instances, of course, where one's behavior clearly indicates that something is going on inside of one's mind. But in mild cases, and in most cases, one's psychological and mental health can be easily hidden from onlookers. Next slide, please. Which is why the emotional effects are so important. Emotions and feelings are key to letting others know what is going on and can be a nice way to check in with ourselves. Are you feeling nervous, anxious, sad, depressed, happy, elated? Sharing our emotions and feelings are a way to keep in touch with how we are feeling inside and out. And it's a good check when it comes to psychological and mental well-being. Next slide, please. Now that we are in the COVID-19 pandemic, what we knew was as normal has changed. Isolation has a whole new meaning. The COVID guidelines, which I think we could all recite from memory, are listed here just to highlight some of the changes to our normal happenings. Next slide, please. So as a result of the changes, COVID-19 isolation is a real phenomenon, and we are adjusting to our new normal. I would also be remiss to not mention the social unrest related to the killing of unarmed Black men by police and the systematic racism within the fibers of the United States. This added additional strain has taken a toll on our psychological and emotional well-being. Next slide, please. So birthday parties, weddings, work, school, football, basketball games, live events, movie and theater, travel, cruises, vacations have been put on hold, change to accommodate COVID-19 guidelines, and increase our psychological and emotional pressures. Next slide. So how do we overcome the isolation? I think the first thing is to recognize it. For those who live alone, it may be easier to identify the feelings associated with isolation. But what about those of us who live with someone and still are having feelings associated to isolation? Maybe you are a caregiver but still feel alone, or maybe in a toxic relationship, and although someone is near, you still don't feel quite complete. So I'd recommend taking some time for you. Take time to unwind, listen to your favorite song, watch your favorite movie or TV show, journal, or read a book. Connect with others. I've heard on a recent webinar that one silver lining to this pandemic was the fact that it happened at a time when we have multiple ways to communicate and connect with others. Call or text your friends and family. Drive-bys are a new in thing. A friend of mine recently moved out of state, and so her and her husband scheduled a specific time for family, friends, colleagues to come by. We sat in our car while her and her husband sat in their yard at least 6 feet away, way more than 6 feet away, which allowed us to have a conversation and to wish them well as they were moving. There's FaceTime, Skype, Zoom, Blue Jeans, web meeting, and the list goes on and on. Because sometimes just talking on the phone isn't enough. I haven't seen my grandmother since Thanksgiving of last year. And I talk to her daily, which is helpful, but it's nice when her great-grandchildren who live next to her and know how to use technology, because she doesn't, or at least a smartphone, she's struggled with that, can come over and allow me to FaceTime with her, because seeing someone that you miss just helps you feel better. Connect with community organizations like this webinar. I know the Atlanta Regional Commission is offering free webinars. AARP also has a free webinar. I attended one a couple of weeks ago. If you have an internet connection, these are possible to attend. Some of these webinars also are offered with the option of joining by telephone. You won't be able to see the presentation or the slides, but you will be able to hear the content, and some allow for you to ask questions over the phone. Many faith organizations have also found ways to connect with their members through Facebook and Zoom. I mentioned my grandmother, her church has a conference call that allows their members to join in and listen. And also remember, as was mentioned earlier, that our mental health is linked to our physical health. Eating healthy, balanced meals, taking walks and doing exercise at home, or if you can get out. There are many personal trainers who are offering their classes through video conferencing platforms like this one and the one we mentioned, and John was so helpful to show us a few exercises earlier today. If you've tried these strategies and are still not feeling well, it may be time to speak with a mental health professional. As a mental health professional and the recipient of therapy, I'm a huge advocate for therapy and support groups, and I know many offerings of therapy services are happening online. I'm not as familiar with how support groups are running right now, though. If you don't have someone, there are hotlines that you can call to speak to someone. I saw a link at the CDC that had listed several hotline options for individuals just to have someone to talk to. I just want you all to know that there are ways to feel connected during a time where connecting with people is not encouraged. For example, my husband's family scheduled a movie night, and I thought, how is this going to happen? But the organizer, my husband's cousin, had us choose 4 movies from Disney Plus. Hamilton won. And so she set up a conference call line for all of us family members to call in. Before the movie, we all talked on the conference call. We decided at the exact moment, or as close to that exact moment as possible, to push play during the intermission, because Hamilton is a play. And so there was an intermission. We chatted and checked in, and then we also talked at the end of the movie. His cousin had also arranged for us to receive movie snacks in a package that she sent to us ahead of time. It was nice to just feel connected, even though we weren't necessarily having a conversation the same way we would in a movie theater. I encourage you to be creative and think outside the box during this time. Thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you. Any questions?
Okay, so I think one of your resounding comments was to be creative and think outside of the box. That was your closing remark. And I think in this time we're starting to just demand some type of normal in return, but with, you know, today's the first day of fall. We see the weather changing. We see people, you know, probably not adhering to all of the guidelines. So I really appreciate the admonishment to be creative and think of ways that you can still check in with people, even though we have to be apart. Let's see, that was excellent. People over a certain age may not have a good device. Sometimes the phone screens are too small compared to other devices. So that can be complicated for aging adults. Do you have any thoughts about, you know, overcoming technology?
Yeah, no, I think my grandmother would tell you she is terrible with technology. And so one resource I have is that my aunt lives with her. And so my aunt is a little more tech savvy than she is, so she can set her up to have the computer in front of her or to hold the phone. As I mentioned, my cousins or her great grandchildren literally live next door. And so they will come over or they'll FaceTime with me. And I'm like, oh, go check on Granny. I want to see how she's doing. And so it alleviates her having to be the one to push the buttons, because if I'm waiting on that, that's not going to happen. And I know in some circumstances that isn't available, but that's what I've been able to do, is just to rely on other individuals who are more technically savvy to help navigate that. Outside help, again, my grandmother likes writing notes. I mean, I guess you could write to someone. It's a little, you know, we don't think about sending cards or writing letters. Of course, talking on the phone is still pretty common. I think it's still pretty common. It happens, and like I said, I check in with my grandmother almost daily. But again, it's just sort of kind of knowing who it is that you want to connect to and what avenue would work with them, given where they are in the lifespan.
Okay. All right. So here's one question as we wrap up with Whit Morgan, and you all can give us a thumbs up in the comments, or I think there's a feature where you can raise your hand. One comment from Ms. Smith is it's not a comment, but I think we should keep daylight savings time because it's getting darker earlier, and that can kind of be a downer for us. So there are a lot of states sort of beginning to legislate daylight savings time. So I wonder, of those who want to participate during our live session with either, I don't know if you have an emoji on your hand, this is a little bit different, but do you think we should keep daylight savings time, or should we keep the time cycle as it is? Give us a thumbs up or a raised hand, or, you know, boo, thumbs down. Just a little interaction for us as we're talking about, you know, a lot of stuff. I mean, between super aging and our emotional and psychological health. But it is fall, and we know during fall that's a time of transition, and things change, but we are still in a pandemic. I mean, I just saw where we are at 200,000 deaths. We have surpassed that for coronavirus, and right now we are not in person as a research center. So we are ramping up. We're starting to open up. Whit and Laterica, if you guys want to come on now and share with us some of those updates about the healthy aging and healthy brain study. But thank you guys for participating in our poll. I just thought it would be curious to know what are your general thoughts, because we are coming up on that time in the season where, you know, it's getting darker earlier, and we are told to get out and get, vitamin D, vitamin E, but, oh, I see lots of comments too. I think we should keep the time standard. All right, so Whit, Laterica, what updates do you have? Every week, guys, we're talking about healthy aging. It is a worldwide study. Whit and Chloe have come on every week to give us updates and keep us informed. And we want you to participate. If you're actively participating, we appreciate your engagement. But Whit.
Yeah, so Cornelia, am I able to share my screen here? Because I know we've talked a little bit about some healthy aging stuff. And for those that might be new here, just kind of a quick recap real fast as the Emory Healthy Aging Study is our online initiative, really geared towards learning more about how we age and the cause of certain age-related diseases. And for those that do join the Emory Healthy Aging Study, we're looking at information. We're asking people to complete this online health history questionnaire once a year. Excuse me. And as we're looking at that information, we're also looking for folks that might be a good fit for our Alzheimer's focused sub-study. And so that's one of the things I kind of want to revisit every now and then, just to make sure that anybody that's joined on here is aware of the resources that we have available to you, and so that you can learn more about it. And one of the things that I wanted to touch on here and just kind of walk you through, if I can see if it'll let me share my screen. Not yet. Let's see here. Because you mentioned earlier, we have hit the 200,000 mark for folks that have unfortunately died from the coronavirus this past year. And as we're really looking at research, and one of the big things that I'm really focusing on here is how do we get folks informed of the Emory Healthy Brain Study, because that's killing more than 500,000 people every year in the United States. And that number is only continuing to grow. It's continuing to affect our minority groups even more so. And that's one of the things I want to make sure that we can show y'all some of these resources that we have available, just to be able to learn more about how this disease affects us, and also how you can get involved with it. And Cornelia, it's still not letting me click over here. I was wanting to showcase one of the pages on our website.
Let's see, I am making you co-host, but I'd ask Crystal or Natalie if they can take over my remote and make Whit a co-host, because my computer's not cooperating. We love our technology. Even for those of us who are somewhat savvy, it still can be, there can be barriers and issues.
We all have our moments on here, especially. Oh no.